Bye, Pete. So, thanks, Kathy, for joining in. This is like my first attempt to do this live on Facebook. I'm going to hand the phone over to my son. But we're talking about CBD and cannabis tonight. But there's going to be a twist to this that I think nobody's expecting, including my son. So anyway, that's my son. And I'm going to hand you the phone because Kathy's watching.
Who?
Friend of mine, Kathy. But I'm going to have you handle the live.
What does that mean?
But this is the live feed.
What, Facebook?
Yes, I do want to tag. Oh, Facebook. Okay, now you've been tagged in the video. Facebook just asked if I wanted to tag you. It recognized your face.
Okay, that's creepy.
I know, right? So you get to hold that and see if we can't field questions.
So
that's being recorded.
this can't hear me.
No.
This is your own private thing?
Yeah, that's just recorded.
So I can do that?
Yeah, but as long as it's not on there. Well, yeah, I guess you could do it on there too, but. So we're hoping to get questions. If you see questions on there, and feel free to just turn the camera around too when I'm on the air.
I'll just hold it like this.
Sure.
How do I look in it?
You see the back of your head is pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah. Somebody said something.
So when I go to the bathroom, can I take this with me?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. What is it? There was a green question down there. Was a green.
No,
Somebody else joined?
Yeah.
Oh, Zena's on. Cool.
Sorry, I'm being dizzy. I don't really think of you when I'm just, it's a phone to me.
Yeah, those are friends of mine. We go way back.
I'm what she created, so I should just have it stare at me.
I'm gonna cut this out.
All right, it's time to get real. I don't know where to point the phone. I'm just gonna move it back and forth.
So, as I said, oh, the mic's coming out. Wanted to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We are actually on Facebook Live, and hey Des. Oh, and Des has joined me, and we are recording for my YouTube channel. And hopefully, with all the technology, including this mic, things will work out pretty well. Now, Des, you're on. You have to let me know what people say if there's something I need to know.
My sister's watching, and your friend Zena said hi.
Hey, Zena. And Gina's watching?
Runa.
Oh, okay, cool.
Runa's watching.
Hey, Runa. So anyway, this evening is, like I said a little while ago actually on Facebook, that essentially this program tonight is about CBD and cannabis. And as I also announced earlier on Facebook today, don't get too overly excited because this is going to involve quite a bit. And so to start it all off, what I wanted to say is that I guess the best way I want to go with this is that can you not hear yourself?
No, I cannot hear myself at all.
Are you plugged in? You're on.
I think so.
You're on.
We'll go ask Steve in a minute if he's heard anything I've said.
I hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can
my
hear
headphones are just weird.
Okay.
They've kind of always been like
So
that.
I can hear you. So But I guess how I want to say this is I've been talking to a few people about it, and this program is not I personally am not advocating for or against cannabis. This is more about my issue.
I am totally advocating for cannabis.
Are you?
Yeah, 100%. I have zero experience with zero. I have zero experience with the plant.
Mm-hmm. So then my question is, why cannabis and not every plant?
Because, let me try and be intelligent for a second. Because this camera has to look at me now, because this is all about me. The reason cannabis above all plants is because you can use it, you can eat it, you can use it medicinally, you can make fiber out of it, you can make it into fuel. That's why I'm convinced. I don't know if I'm talking loud enough into the mic.
You are. You're doing good.
Okay.
I have you turned down because you do project quite well.
It's an all-around plant. It does everything. It'll put all those. I wouldn't say it would put fuel out of company. I don't think there's any way to put fuel out of. You know what I mean?
Business, yeah.
And but there's a cartoon that's all about guys and their family, you know, and they do an episode about this, and the issue is the paper, because you can make paper out of it, you know, and it'll destroy paper.
Cultures have been using the hemp plant, all forms of hemp, for thousands of years. We know that. And I agree with you. It is a very well-rounded plant. It has a lot of benefits. But at the same time, I find it ridiculous that we're even talking about having to legalize any plant.
That's true. I mean,
it's like going to the grocery store and seeing a package of food labeled natural. I mean,
yeah.
that's kind of where I'm coming from here. It's like we're talking about.
But could you imagine at grocery stores if in the lettuce department they just had nugs? You could put it in your salad, because you can put it in your salad. It's kind of weird, but
Yes. I
yeah.
have a secret.
What's up?
Are you watching Facebook Live? Okay. So
Mia's watching now.
Hey Mia.
Hi Mia.
Thanks for joining, you guys. So I have a secret for you. I've actually eaten raw cannabis. Don't be disappointed.
Oh my God. No way, mother. Not you.
Yes.
Oh, shucks. My own mother has partaken in the cannabis.
Yes, but did you know that eating it, if you eat, especially the indica.
Do you cook it or do you just eat it raw?
Indica, that's how I want to say it. If you eat the indica, I just eat it raw. I just eat the nug. And the reason why, truthfully, is I have a medical issue in my spine where I have cysts that they cannot operate on, and the neurological pain is extraordinary. But at the same time, I cannot tolerate being stoned. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I have no comment on it. I have no experience.
I know that about you. You're a good man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Word of the day is facetious.
Facetious. There you go.
That's the word of the day.
Good. I like that word. That's a good word.
We don't do words of the day all the time, so you have to listen to every show to get every word of the day.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I have eaten it, and it is I don't get the psychoactive effects, and at the same time, I actually get the pain relief, and just a small amount has lasted me for 24 hours. So, that said, I see benefit. At the same time, I struggle with the whole idea of having to legalize any particular plant, being a plant person myself.
Hold on, I gotta look at the list.
Okay, look at the list.
Okay, so, but that would mean that you could legalize cocaine in a sense, because it comes from a plant.
Right.
I mean, it was at one time legal.
Right, and you have to understand, we're not talking. Okay, so we're.
I'm not advocating. I'm definitely not advocating.
No, I know
for that.
I know that, and I. The thing is, it's like if you talk about legalizing all plants. Number one, I don't know who came out and said that they were the god or the king or the queen that was going to implement people who can and cannot use certain things. I understand it takes a certain level of responsibility, but the fact is that with a coca plant being legal, we just lack trust. I mean, this truthfully is a big message of lack of not trusting one another, to be responsible and not allowing one another the freedom. I mean, because let's face it, animals actually feed your, you have to move that just a tad away, move it away, because it's there's feedback here, or move this away.
Can you hear it? I can't hear it.
I can hear that now you're good.
I feel like
We had a little bit of feedback, guys. So but the thing is like psychoactive plants. For instance, last week we talked about salicylic acid being a signaling molecule that indicates potential threats. THC is actually an insect repellent for the cannabis plant. It also happens to be a psychoactive chemical because it is toxic, and plants actually produce a lot of these toxins in order to keep animals away. It's for their own protection. That's the reason why they do it. So THC, that's actually the reason why THC was even developed in, I should say how nature actually developed the, nature's amazing. I mean, because it communicates via chemicals. So if there's a potential threat coming into the area, or if it's new, this is actually how the human immune system adapted back in the early 1300s to the Black Plague. The reason why you and I are sitting here is because our ancestors survived, and they survived because changes occurred to the immune system. And that occurred because messages were coming in, there was a threat, and the body had to make a change. This is exactly how plants operate. So in the case of a coca plant, there's a lot of benefits to that plant. For whatever reasons, we've found a way to use and turn it into cocaine, and it was actually a really great anesthetic. It started to become abused because for some reason, out of all the animals on the planet, the human species is the only one that seems to be able to lack self-regulation.
I don't know. You showed me a video earlier about a bunch of drunk animals, and they looked like addicts. They looked like they had problems. It was funny. Anyone listening, you should look at it. What did you search? How did you find that video?
I had actually seen it before. It was for the marula fruit, and you can actually see the monkeys and the elephants, and they go a little tipsy.
It's adorable.
But the funny thing is, if you remember when they
Segue.
started that video, the first thing that they said was the animals were bored. And I have seen countless reports from scientists that have actually said the same thing. My question is, how do we know they're bored?
I don't think they're smart enough to get bored.
Well, here's
Is that ignorant? I feel like maybe
No.
it's ignorant.
No, what there is there's more of an intelligence, if you will, to nature where it actually will guide itself. People will actually go to. That's going to be a really good look for you too. We gravitate in the direction that we need. Okay, here's a really good example. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, so omega-6s. We're all familiar with omega-6s. They're in, that's pretty much what your canola oil is, and like any of your snack foods are high in omega-6s. And so we have an issue these days with people overeating these. They kind of go hog wild, if you will, on these omega-6 foods. The interesting thing is omega-6 is a fatty acid that's required by the body. Omega-6 actually is used by the body, believe it or not, by the endocannabinoid system. And they've been studying the endocannabinoid system, cannabinoids per se, in nature for decades. And omega-6s actually are used by the body to help influence the production of anandamide, which is the bliss hormone, which is exactly what THC does as well. This is the reason why people can actually eat a bunch of potato chips and then they kind of just feel, there's like this...
Potato chips.
Yeah. It's because it's influencing the activity of the endocannabinoid system. And so if we're going to talk about human beings and being able to self-regulate, it's going to take some time, because it would take time. But the fact is that we have to take it into perspective that this is possibly, if we stop sitting in judgment and just look at it as this is the body doing, it's asking for something. Whether we're talking about pot or chips, it's asking for something. It's called body wisdom. And so in this case, the animals eating the fruit, the marula fruit, there was something in that fruit that they got intoxicated, but there was something that their body was instinctively needing. And truthfully, after talking last week with the GMOs and 45 million chemicals being consumed around the world, the human species is not the only species being affected by this. The animals are too, as well as the plants. And so we have to take all of that in consideration. And if they're experiencing a level of anxiety like Nymeria and Theo and other animals that we know, and our favorite cat, Pretty Kitty, we have to realize that...
Kitty's dead.
I know, but she was a very anxious cat. And she drank skullcap like it was, yeah.
She was under the bed for half of her 20-year life.
But you know what?
Cat.
We digress, but at the same time, she was severely abused before she came into our family. So she lived with a high amount of stress. And so she lived on herbs because she needed to self-medicate, so to speak. And that's essentially what I see happening. And you were right to begin with, that cannabis does have a lot of medicinal value to it. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with using it. I just don't think that we should be in, I just disagree with the fact that we live in this world right now that we have to even consider legalizing anything that is a plant, because we have the ability to we just instinctively know, that's how I want to say that.
So do you think it's because it opens people's minds, or because it'll put medicines out of business in paper?
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's a combination, but I feel like it's actually more the corporations. It's not actually, because it opens your mind, but like, dumb people are dumb people. So it's not going to open their mind. They're still going to be dumb. They're just going to be on the couch and dumb, which is kind of good too. Just keep them there so they don't interact with us. It's just they just stay home, dumb people. That's what I'm getting. That's what all I'm here for, is to tell you if you're dumb, you know you are.
You call it afraid.
Sorry, I just
you just went on a rant. The thing is that it does activate the endocannabinoid. And the interesting thing is, when I did all my coursework on addiction, and marijuana, like caffeine, actually does alter the dopaminergic mesolimbic pathway, meaning it changes the brain structure, just like caffeine does, just like cocaine does. I mean, there's a change to the brain structure. So the fact is that people are needing this and if they have a tendency, there's certain tendencies. Like last week we talked about the transcription factors, the FOXP2. That was actually a few weeks ago. And then
I was literally just listening to that song.
Were you?
Right before I got here, because it came on my YouTube, and I was like, all right, I have to jam it.
There you go. But there's also a BDNF transcription factor that is highly regulated by excessive cortisol. And if there's excessive cortisol levels flowing, then you're going to have the need to activate the endocannabinoid system. But with such a dysregulation of the epigenetic system, and I know I probably need to stop at that point, but with the dysregulation of the epigenetic system, you're going to have a lot of fluctuations. And so you're going to have people who are overly stressed, I mean seriously overly stressed. Your brother's roommate, Mike.
I'm not very stressed.
I did some stuff with him once, and he actually got really sleepy, and I had to explain to him that his body was so stressed that that he was just actually relaxing. And so that's what happens. So it's not necessarily about being dumb, it's more about just being so relieved of having all the pressure.
I am listening, I'm sorry. You're
distracted.
I was just filming Steve for the Facebook Live people. I got to see Steve just in the lobby listening. He's our biggest fan.
But before we go on, I want to take a break and do a little bit of music.
Oh, can I choose what song are you playing?
Well, you can see what my playlist is here.
No,
but don't say it out loud. But I want to say, before we jump into the next song, I wanted to say that when we come back, we'll be talking about the Monster Company.
Monster, yeah, the Monster Company, the evil one that sues people for growing their crops because it's pollinated by the air.
So this isn't
not to be confused with that delicious drink that has claws.
Yeah, so be thinking about that, because obviously we're talking GMOs here, and how does that relate to cannabis and CBD? we'll talk about that when we get back.
But I want to. All right, I want to ask one.
Take one.
One thing I want to. The one that. Not that one. Yeah, that one. Yep.
Okay.
Also, because I don't like comparing it to cocaine, because that's a terrible thing. I want to talk about eventually it compared to psychedelics, because it is considered a psychedelic, and the first time you try it, which I have zero experience with, it's really intense, and then it calms down over time.
Well, yeah, we can totally do that. And what I want to say to that, as far as it doesn't compare to Coke, and it doesn't compare to anything.
Well, one makes you sleep, and one makes you never want to sleep.
But what I wanted to say is that because of the dysregulation of the epigenetic system, everybody's body is essentially different, especially stemming from that point in time where the immune system diversified like it did. And the point that I'm getting at is this is the reason why not everybody likes pot. Not everybody can handle it because their body doesn't need it. So this is the part that I'm getting at when we were talking about animals. Not everybody needs it, and so they go to their drug of choice, if you will, regarding being self-medicated. Some people don't even get involved with drugs. Some people, maybe cigarettes. I mean, maybe there's caffeine. There's the point that I'm getting at is you're right. It's not the same because it has a different impact on the system. And truthfully, if we were to deregulate all of these plants, so to speak, I unfortunately have to say that you're gonna. There's the theory of Darwinism, right? Where you're gonna have the thinning of the culture, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you're gonna have people who are gonna overdo it and lose themselves. But eventually, there's going to become a normalization because if we're just allowed to truthfully self-medicate, because Lord knows we live in a world that is excessively populated by chemicals, being able to help balance that system out is essential. And so on that note, we'll get into the song Happy by Pharrell Williams, and we'll talk Monster and so forth from there. So thank you, and we'll be right back.
So I don't know if that can hear the music.
Huh?
I don't know if your phone can hear the music.
I don't think the phone can hear the music, so we have to talk.
You gotta talk.
I have to talk? Oh, wow.
Well, she's very good so far, guys.
Yeah.
You need to let her lead a little bit.
I think he's doing just fine.
She's doing good, but the way it is, she's got
Well,
an agenda of what she wants to put out.
It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna go into more shows. We'll just.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know what I hear.
So,
And it's all good.
so we need a light. Can I have a light, please?
I don't think we have any more.
Except that comment
Oh,
about
we have
Steve.
this.
What happened with Steve? It was like,
Here we go. Hey guys. So I'm like new to the whole Facebook Live thing and running all this technology. As you can see, my board, and there really is an agenda. It is really about helping people understand that plants really are what we need, and to be talking about this as if it's something that needs to be legalized is crazy. So anyway, right now we're playing Happy by Pharrell Williams. I may end up sharing this playlist if I can figure that out here in a while, and everybody can hear what we're playing, because it's some pretty good songs. I try to coordinate my music with the topic, but I can truthfully tell you this topic is going to carry on for at least another week, if not more.
Yeah.
It's pretty big.
We should just talk about it all the time.
Ashley's watching. You know.
Ashley, you got some?
Yeah, Stabs Ashley.
Nice.
Say hey.
stage fright.
You keep moving the phone.
Well, take the phone.
We're talking about THC. I have no experience with the substance, but
It's an insect repellent, man.
it's an insect repellent, I'm pretty sure. I don't actually think that's true. Every time the smoke is around me, which again I have zero experience with.
It's an insect repellent for the plant.
Well,
For the plant. on YouTube.
But they do have an issue with spider mites though, so it's not a very good repellent for them.
Okay, so that's a good point to bring up because keep in mind we're talking GMOs and chemicals in the plant, and plants are adapting. And if they have problems with spider mites, then that's because something's changed in the plant that it can't protect itself any longer.
It's fair. That's a good point.
That photograph is a rare occasion. Rare occasion indeed that I see this dog like this. I could do this for 5 minutes.
He has no idea. Sorry. You shouldn't let me be the cameraman.
It's all good, man. All right. I'm headed back out. You guys did a good show.
I have your.
My
Yeah.
the thing that we don't know nothing about.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you. Whenever.
Shh, please. Oh, we're happy. We're having a good time here.
I'm actually really hungry, and I can't wait. I don't know. I'm not sure why I'm so hungry. I'm like really hungry, and
Well,
I have some food cooking at home.
You do. It is dinner time too.
It's gonna be so bomb.
You worked hard today, son. You worked hard today. You had a big day yesterday.
Thanks for validating me.
So, one of the things I wanted to say is that, you know, what's interesting to me is, to basically, I guess, expand on, is the word I'm looking for, expand on why I think we need to be looking at plants as a whole instead of just going out to legalize one particular plant. Because, let me just warn you, be careful what you wish for. Yeah, be careful what you wish for, because we're about to get into that. But before I say anything further, there is another cannabinoid that has been, that is actually in high concentration in the cannabis plant that is found throughout nature, not just the cannabis plant. And that is actually called, that's a group of it's called caraphyllene oxide. And beta-caraphyllene is actually, I think it's actually a higher level than CBD. And they're looking at, they, being scientists, are looking at
The people none of us know.
What they can do. I mean, they're actually studying beta-caraphyllene. They actually, I will say this much. So the caraphyllene oxides are not recommended for anybody taking any sort of antipsychotic, anti-anxiety medication. The reason for that is because it actually interacts at the liver level, at the liver enzyme level, and here you go, so does CBD. And depending on, again, on the dysregulation of the individual epigenome, how that goes is very dangerous. But at the same time, you have these scientists who are studying these cannabinoids because they understand exactly how beneficial they are for the body, and trying to, of all things, replicate these in labs, and they do that through a fermentation process using yeast. CBD is doing the same thing. They're not harvesting this from plants any longer. They're actually growing it in labs, and they're using a fermentation process. And that's concerning simply because when you take it out of the context of the plant that it naturally grows in, because CBD and THC have a distinct relationship, CBD actually, they work together. That actually works together. And when you isolate a single constituent, again, science, this is backed by evidence, and throughout science, is that there's a synergy to plant constituents. And so when you have the caraphyllene oxides, and you have the THC, and you have the CBD, and the other 400 plus chemicals, I think there's over 60 cannabinoids. There's 60 cannabinoids within the cannabis plant alone, and then there's an additional, well, we talked about it, there's 421 constituents, so that would be, do the math, Des, 361 constituents. Additional.
I don't like math. I don't even want to. No, I'm okay. I
Okay.
could, but I'm not.
So
We all have cell phones. Like
we do have cell phones, and we have calculators. and so
calculators on
forth,
those
yeah.
cell phones.
So I just wanted to throw that out there, that there's a number of cannabinoids that they are aware of, that they are studying, and that they are attempting to replicate in labs. And again, when you use these individual constituents by themselves, the impact is not as good. So you're going to have to combine them with other ingredients. And I just want to go out and say this much, and that is the products that the CBD is working with something else in the product. Again, it depends, and it also depends on what other things you're using and your lifestyle, because I'm sure CBD is not the only thing. If you're involved with cannabis, then you're probably getting a better benefit from the plant because you're getting the whole plant. But that said, the Monster Company has merged.
Maybe that's not what we should say. That might be what they're.
Well, I don't know. Okay,
The
we
big
don't want
bad
to.
man.
The big M. We'll just say it that way, and we're not talking McDonald's.
That sounds like a cool bad guy. The big M.
Yeah, the big M. So the big M has officially merged with the ever popular Aspirin Company. These are two very large chemical companies. They have officially merged, and you guys can Google it and read up on what all the legalities that came about with that. But essentially, they sold off. They were forced to sell off some of their assets, so they weren't a monopoly. And they did. They sold off $66 billion in assets to BASF, which is the largest German chemical company in the world. So we're looking at a bunch of chemical companies who are trying to regulate these cannabinoids, and like I said, it's time that we be careful what we wish for. I think we might want to just redirect our voices to be demanding our birthright. That's how I want to say that. It's demanding our birthright. Because, like I said, cannabinoids exist throughout nature. The human body can produce its own cannabinoids, and cannabis itself is very, very beneficial. There's no question about that. I mean, I myself, like I said, I've actually eaten the raw weed. I don't get stoned by it, which I appreciate, but it does help relieve the pain that I have when I get that. And by the way, it's also very good for migraines. It helps really well with migraines.
And this was all done legally in the state of Colorado, of course.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
So, on that note, the Big M has also officially produced its first GMO cannabis plant, or cannabis seed.
See, they've ruined the plant. It's done.
Well, you know what's interesting is that we were talking about earlier about the impact of GMOs on nature, and and humans and plants and so forth. And so there's no telling how any of this is going to affect anything. So things are going to start to look outside the norm, and it doesn't mean that it's not normal. It's the new normal, if that makes any sense, because our bodies are struggling to stay alive. This is what I said to somebody the other day. It's like back in the early 1300s, the immune system adapted itself to help our ancestors survive. But now our immune systems are struggling to keep us alive. And so the addition of, and being able to have plants would be very, I mean, instead of individual components and, or for that matter, that have been fabricated. Because you were talking earlier when we were at the music break. You said something about that I was talking to you about THC being an insect repellent. And you said to me that it's now that I guess they are prone to spider mites.
Yeah, they can get spider mites. Mainly, it's an issue for indoors. Outdoors doesn't really have that problem. I have zero experience with this, but yeah, spider mites is so. They're a bug that still needs to be repelled.
Yeah, and so again, when you have the assertion of 45 million chemicals globally, whether it's in your food, your clothing, I want to say that it's been outlawed in Europe, but in this country it's not outlawed to actually have chemicals in the clothing to protect it from body odor and so forth. That's called nanotechnology. This nanotechnology is being used to infuse the bodies, which is going into all kinds of body care products. And it is, so all these different types of chemicals that we're being exposed to are also being exposed to plants, and the animals are exposed to it as well. And how the individual DNA adapts is significant. And in the case of these plant crops, well, you have there's no telling. They're not going to have the protection that they used to have. They're not being allowed to adapt on their own. They're being influenced to adapt a different way. And what I'm more concerned about, truthfully, I don't think you and I talked about this yet, and maybe we have, is that last week we talked about tobacco, and we talked about the transgenic vaccines that are coming into play with GMOs, which is, in case anybody's not familiar with that, it is the inclusion, basically it's the insertion of bacteria and virus DNA into our fruits and vegetables, and the predominant crop at this point is, there's somebody saying something, the predominant crop is tobacco. Is it asking to tag me?
No, it's asking to tag that. Yeah, I'll let you read the name.
Oh, no. So,
sorry.
no, that's okay. Yeah, it was a distraction. That's okay, though. So anyway, the transgenic vaccines is what they're going to be inserting into plants with the bacterial and viral DNA. They're going into fruits and vegetables, and the predominant crop that they're looking at doing this with is tobacco. And now that we have officially approved a GMO cannabis seed, crop, what are they going to do with that? Because they've already started looking at tobacco, and these are the things that we need to be paying attention to, because if this is how we're going to, if this is the road that we're taking with legalization, we're actually digging our own graves.
I was digging today at work, and I was thinking about digging my own grave, and I was like, I would never do that. I would just stand there and be like, you can dig it when you're done.
So
totally dark subject, but I was digging at work, so that's of course on my mind.
Yeah. So now,
of course.
On that note, I think it'd be good for us to jump into Willie and Merle Haggard, and it's all going to pot.
What time is it? Yeah, we've been talking forever.
I know. I don't know. So, you know what I need to do?
What?
I need to make an announcement.
Announcement making time.
So, what do I want to say now?
After this song?
No, after this song, I know I'm going to make an announcement, but
we still got to talk about the psychedelic aspect.
yeah, we can do that. I mean,
I guess.
are we going to let it roll to next week?
Yeah. We have more music to play. It could just be really heavy music, bunch of Cheech and Chong and stuff.
This is funny. I mean, we can go into a legal smile and feel it still.
That'd be great to play back to back. Illegal smile and then feel it still.
So I can put my video on Facebook and Instagram for you guys. Okay, just want to make sure we weren't crossing the ethical boundary of the station.
No.
We're still live.
Yeah. That's not live. That's just.
Yeah.
That's Memorex right there.
Hey man. Good.
Steve Lynch is watching. He's standing right next to me.
How did that?
You guys want to see Steve Lynch?
And here he is, the mystery man and the dead dog.
She's a good dog.
She is. She's such a sweetie.
So, anyway, I wanted to say I don't know if you guys heard, we're actually playing Willie and Merle. It's all going to pot.
It's a good song.
Because it is. We need to, it's time that we take a stand for what's ours.
Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg do a song. That's pretty good too.
Do they?
Go Snoop! It might cuss. We can't play it.
Well, we can play it for Facebook Live. We can't play it on this one.
Hold on. I gotta... much longer. Oh, it's done. Talk about the timing.
Okay. So I'm going to put a pause on that discussion for just a moment to make a couple of community announcements. And I just wanted to say that we have voter registration still available in Madrid on Sundays throughout September. You can go by the old boarding house, Mercantile from 10 to 1, or the Mine Shaft from 1 to 4 for assistance in registering to vote or updating your registration. You can also visit the New Mexico Secretary of State's website to register online or confirm your registration. Another event coming up this weekend is Belle of the West. She's got a couple of days of events going on over there, so feel free to check that out if you're in the neighborhood. And I also wanted to say that I just found this today, and I thought it was kind of cool. Amigos Hike up in Cerrillos Hills is taking place actually next weekend, the 6th of October. But that's something that it's a volunteer-led program that takes you out into the wilderness. And so maybe, yeah, there's all kinds of things to do around here. So thanks for being a part of our community, and just keep sending us questions, and we'll keep going from there. So on that note, we're going to jump into Illegal Smile by John Prine.
Nice. I like this song.
Yeah, have you guys seen John Prine? This is awesome. Hey, Gina.
Hey! You have Instagram stuff too.
That's okay. It's just
Can I just read it to the public?
I don't care.
I'm just kidding. Someone else, you got Twitter on here? Get some tweets. Is this not live on Twitter?
No, it's just Facebook. I couldn't do more than one. I can't even do that. I'm having a hard time with this one. So, hey, Hans. Oh my gosh, how are you doing? I love this song.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
An Illegal Smile.
So I don't know how much you guys could hear. Again, I mean, I don't like to say I have an agenda, but if you know me, you know I do. And it really is about making what we deserve, our birthright, which is our health and truth. And so essentially I'm talking about how all of our crops are being controlled somehow and regulated, and right down to cannabis. And so we need to be careful what we wish for, and maybe rethink what we're asking for. And yeah, I just that's pretty much the whole agenda here, and talking about the medicinal value and how it works in the body, and
how it makes you feel so awesome.
Yeah.
Hey guys, look at my shirt. That's a cool shirt, huh? Billy the Kid is my idol. I want to be like Billy the Kid. I just want to do exactly what he did.
Yeah.
I want to do exactly what he did. You don't have to talk about it, but shoot people.
Yeah, no, that's what he
Rob
did.
banks.
But he, you know what? He was, what do you call? He was,
I bet he smoked weed. Do you guys think Billy the Kid smoked weed? I do.
well, you know what he was, though? He stood up for what he believed in. I mean, he might know he was crazy.
Yeah, that's
You can
kind of
either-
the only defense you have for him.
You can toe the line, or you can... So do you want to jump into something else next?
No, we can talk for like 10 minutes and then play Feel It Still.
What do you want to talk about?
How much do you know about the psychedelic effects of the brain? Because I just have experience. I don't know any science behind it. Just like, well, mushrooms are a little more intense. Do whatever you want.
Okay. So we are back. And
Remember, the word of the day is facetious.
Well, we have to figure out a way to implement that word. How do you want to use
Well, that's
that word?
my word of the day. That has nothing to do with anything you've said, obviously. pretty much has everything to do with what I've said,
Right.
except for
Can you use that word in a sentence?
I was being facetious when I said I have zero experience with this. Did I succeed?
Just check it. You used it well.
Bam.
So a little while ago, Decimus mentioned something about the psychedelic effects of marijuana, and so and while we were listening to John Prine, he asked me if I knew anything about the psychedelic effects. Of
Well,
the
I mean,
brain.
in the sense of science, like
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And so here's what I want to say to that. Are you ready?
blow my mind.
Okay, so psychedelic effects occur because essentially the brain is firing all chemicals. Dopamine, serotonin, glutamate, acetylcholine, all of those are just like, it's like a fireworks in the brain.
Yep, that's exactly what it looks like when you close your eyes.
Okay, so that is a psychotic event, is how it's classified.
Not with cannabis. To all the listeners, I wasn't talking about cannabis at that moment.
Well, hold that thought for just a moment.
Fair enough.
So,
Fair enough.
so that's considered a psychotic event, and what we do know, again, depending on the dysregulation of the epigenome, and I use that word lightly, it's dysregulated as it's in reaction to. It's not defective, it's not dysfunctional. The body is simply reacting to the world around, and depending on the individual genome, your chemistry is going to be adjusted somehow. And this is why I say nobody is ever low in dopamine or low in serotonin or high in estrogen. None of that. It's just a matter of what the body is actually producing and where it's at, the state that it's in. So in this case, when you have excessive levels of dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, glutamate, all just kind of going rampant in the brain, that is what is classified. And when we're talking about psychosis or any sort of psychosis diagnosis, I'll say it that way.
That's a great name
You like
for
that?
a band.
Psychosis diagnosis, it is good. But I don't like to use labels. Just, like when we did that show on autism, that was really difficult for me because I don't like labeling people. I don't like classifying people, lumping them into something because it's on a spectrum. Schizophrenia is on a spectrum. I truthfully feel like autism to schizophrenia, that's one big spectrum. And truthfully, I feel like every single one of us lives in that spectrum. It's just a matter of...
We're all a little weird, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're human. We're just human. We're innately human. And so where our chemistry is depends on our genome. And so people who are diagnosed with some sort of psychotic challenge are having rampant, they've got various levels. And so this is the reason why you'll see people on cocktails of medications. Now, I say that because they were able to determine this for a couple of ways. Number one, LSD. They actually took people in and did volunteers to come in and do LSD so that they could actually register what was going on in the brain. And so LSD has a tendency to elevate serotonin levels. And so depending, again, on elevate the serotonin levels in the brain, depending on what drug you're taking, you're going to have different effects. Like ecstasy has a similar serotonin, dopamine type of reaction, whereas PCP is more of acetylcholine or glutamate. So there's different types. But marijuana or cannabis or pot, whatever you want to call it, weed, I've been walking around telling people that I'm doing a show on weed, just to get attention.
Yeah, there's a connotation. There's each word is slightly different. And
so, but they have, okay, so this is what I want to say to that. The cannabis plant has changed, and those of you who are watching on Facebook, you can, if you've been around since the 60s, and if you were a kid in the 60s or whatever, you may know somebody who was.
That was my favorite years.
Cannabis was much different then than it is today. It's been cultivated to be a lot higher in THC, and so again, that ratio of CBD to THC is important, but they've basically cultivated the CBD to a lower scale, and the THC is exceptionally high, and you've got people who are getting higher and higher and higher on this stuff, and you're actually seeing psychotic episodes occur, believe it or not, from getting stoned. So marijuana actually has the capacity to do that, but like I mentioned earlier, it does alter the dopaminergic mesolimbic pathway, and just like many substances do. Now, I will say, if I'm accurate. I'm not remembering all of my text information, but I'm pretty sure psychedelics do not alter that particular structure of the brain. On that note, cortisol does. And we all have cortisol flowing through our bloodstream.
No, I have zero experience with that too.
You don't have any cortisol?
No, I'm not being facetious when I say.
You don't
I
have
use it in the
stress?
second sentence.
You don't have stress?
Oh no, I'm the happiest person. That's why I picked that song.
Okay.
I'm
all right.
happy.
Right on.
I'm all about the peace and the love.
Well, yeah.
And
Peace, love, and all things groovy. That's what I say.
And pizza, preferably the toppings, but
So that's my answer to your question regarding psychotic experiences in the brain. It is a result of the chemistry. And again, we have had a number of people. This is part of the reason why CBD has come into. It's interesting. This is part of the reason why. I mean, I do know that people, like for instance, who've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, do well when they smoke pot. It actually helps to keep, but they have to stay in that zone. They have to remain in that zone. They're trying to use CBD. They've actually patented. So not only and it's patented because they're producing it in labs. Like I said, they're producing it through the fermentation process. And there is complete testimony these days to say it's not having the same effect. It's different than the CBD found in plant. But they are trying to produce it. They've actually produced a crystalline form of CBD, and they have patented it for the use of pharmaceuticals. So I applaud science for at least being interested in the plant constituents. I'm not happy with the way they're using it to capitalize on it, and they're over controlling us. This is the reason why we're out of control. Why the program is out of control. Why they're trying to overregulate us, and just for their own benefit. And but CBD has the ability to stabilize that psychotic behavior, if that makes sense. That's the reason why. It's that, and through these studies that they were doing through people developing or having a psychotic episode, they were finding that the CBD was actually helping to stabilize that. And that's exactly how CBD came into existence as far as being promoted as an individual constituent. But like I said, and for anybody who's just tuned in, it is a...
Phyllis.
Hi, Phyllis.
Phyllis is watching.
It is a known liver enzyme inhibitor. It's not recommended for a lot of antipsychotic medications or anti-anxiety medications. I want to just classify, say, psychotropics, because they all tend to work at the liver level. And so CBD and the beta-caryophyllene, which is another cannabinoid, which is found throughout nature, is also known for the same thing. So, but those two particular cannabinoids actually do, in fact, help stabilize that psychotic experiences.
Okay, so you were asking if we're gonna continue this conversation into next week, and I have a topic that we can start with next week on this.
Awesome.
Let's talk about Marinol.
Okay.
Because that's artificial, or I don't know if that's what you would call it, but it's fake marijuana. It's their version, so.
Okay, cool. Well, that's something I'm not familiar with, so I have some homework this week.
Yeah, let's go check it out. So.
All right, sounds good. So we are going to close this evening with, how about...
Feel It Still.
Feel It Still?
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Thanks for joining in.
I love this song. It makes me dance every time I hear it.
You guys have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.
If you want to see me dance, just play the song around me.
After this, Uncle Willis will be in.
Hi, Uncle Willis.
Okay.
Feel It Still by Portugal the Man. Peace.
Okay, you guys. Thanks for watching. I'm going to try and do this again next week. Let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate you guys. How do I end this? How do I end it?